Hello guys and welcome to lesson 7 of this PHP tutorial, and in this video we'll have a look at PHP data types. And as you see here on top, I have written out all available data types which are in PHP and which we will review in this lesson or in this video. And first one is string, then is integer, then is float, or also known as double, then is boolean, then is object, null, and resource. These all are PHP data types, and today or now we'll have a look how we can create these data types and how we can store them, but we will actually have a look at them. So in previous video we learned how to create a variable, and I will create a variable text, okay? Because first data type which we will be reviewing will be string, and it's called string because it is just it allows us to store some text or text with spaces and so on, and this is known as string. And to create a string we use single quotes or double quotes. As you see here, I used two double quotes, and in between these double quotes we write some text, whatever text we want to store, and this is known as string. And before I start, I would like shortly talk about data types which you already know to make you understand what is data type. For example, you know that there is a text, okay, and there is a numbers, and in programming languages the text would be string and numbers would be integers, okay. And you understand that these are data types because text is not the same as number, because numbers you can count together, you can calculate them, you can add them, you subtract them, and so on and so forth. But with strings or with text you can't do the same thing. You can't add one word to another word and it will display these are two words, okay, because that's text. And in PHP or in any other programming languages, strings are text. And like I'm mentioning you now, if this is your first programming language, then pretty much strings are in all programming languages, so as integers, so as floats, so as boolean, so as objects, so as null, so as resource. All they are available in all programming languages, whatever programming language you will learn after this programming language. All these data types will come up, and if you learn it now, you will understand them in other programming languages. And in this video you just try to understand them. Don't try to remember them or do anything like that. Just try to understand that these are data types which you can use, and when you will start working with programming and when we will start writing scripts, you will eventually get into them and you will understand them clearly. But for now only try to understand them, because it's no point to remembering anything here. Okay, first are strings, and this is just a text. This is some text, and you could say I am a string, okay. And if you would want to display this on the screen, you could use echo statements straight before here. As you know, we can echo out variables, and in this variable we stored this string value. Basically what we stored there is text. So let's save this and let's preview it, run in Chrome. Okay, as I'm using Chrome browser, if you're using any other browser you could run in that browser. And as you know, we need to delete this beginning off, so we say localhost there, okay. And my server is started, as you see here. That's why I am able to work with PHP. And make sure that always your server is started here in your exam control panel, otherwise your PHP will not work, because PHP, as you now know probably from previous videos, is executed on server, and without server it just don't work. And here we displayed string, okay, with just some text. And now I will show you why we can use single quotes and why we can use double quotes. For example, in English language we could say something, if for example the same, this is some text we would write in single quotes. Okay, this would do the same, this would do exactly the same. This would store this string value and allow us to display this on the screen. So let's save it and let's run it in our browser. You see that nothing has changed. This is some text and it still gets displayed on the screen with no problems. But the difference is, for example, if you would write it's or it is, for example, it, you know, in English language, it goes as well with single quote in between. So in this scenario, string starts here at the top and string will finish when code will be read from this particular PHP code will be read, string will stop here, and then this S letter is not started anywhere. And if we save this and we try to preview it, like refresh, you see parse error, syntax error, unexpected S, because this PHP script, it doesn't understand what is that S, because string actually finishes here with second single quote. That's if and we can go around this by using double quotes. Okay, double quote in front and double quote after, and then this will be interpreted as string and displayed on the screen. So let's save it, refresh it again, and you see this is some text. It is displayed on the screen with that single quote. So another way how we could go around this is by using backslash. For example, we again put single quotes around this string, and if we would want to escape this particular quote which is between it and letter S, we could simply use before it backslash. Okay, you use backslash and then it's escaped. It will understand script when it will be read, it will understand that this backslash escapes actually that quotation mark, and string finishes at the end as usual. Let's save it, let's go back to our browser, refresh, and you see it's still displaying without any errors or notices from our PHP. Okay, this is simply text, so string is text, and you can, like I mentioned before, to write string you can use single quotes or double quotes. Now we will have a look at second data type, which is integer. And integer is number without decimal points. For example, now we will create another variable and I will call it number. And as you know, we can call our variables however we want to call them. And if we have, for example, two words in our variables, then normally you would use underscore and then you would write another word, for example, number one. Okay, and this is as well still a variable, and simply we are separating two words, and it allows us easier to read this particular in our script. And let's add, let's say 33 or any number you want. And when we are creating numbers, we don't put quotation marks around them, because any programming language, like notice guys, any programming language, not only PHP, whenever you create numbers or strings, when you create strings you use quotation marks, whether single or double quotation marks, and that's happening in programming languages. And whenever you create numbers, you don't need to use any quotation marks around it, and the program will understand that this is number. So we are storing number in number1 variable and echoing out on the screen. So let's save it and let's preview it in browser. Okay, let's save it, and we have previewed it in browser. And now, for example, imagine we will put quotation marks. Oh no, let's create another variable. I will remove this echo now, not here, and I will create another variable and I will call it number2. Okay, and I will give it a value of 2. Okay, and then I will create another variable and I will call it sum, and I will count these two numbers together, like number1. Okay, plus we haven't talked about arithmetic operators, and we will talk about operators in next videos. There are 5 types of operators in PHP, and I will talk about them in next videos. And here we type number1 plus number2. Okay, and put semicolon at the end, and then simply let's echo out variable sum. Okay, now we are echoing out, so in variable sum, as you know, we are storing number 1, which is 33, plus 2, which is number 2. It would be 35, and we are echoing on the screen. So let's save it, let's preview it in our browser. We see that 35 is displayed on the screen. Okay, this is how numbers work. So you can calculate them and you can count them together. And this is integer. And note that integers are full numbers. They are not numbers with some decimal points and so on. But now we will talk about decimal point numbers, which are known in programming as floats, or they are also known as doubles. And those are those numbers which come with point, like something 0.34, 5 or something. And now if we count and count together 33.345 plus 2, let's save it, let's preview it in browser. You see that 30.5.345 is displayed on the screen, and this is not a number, this is not an integer, this is a double. This is a double or float, like I mentioned before. So this is third data type in PHP or any other programming languages which you ever will learn if this is your first programming language. Then next data type is Boolean, and Boolean is actually only two values. It is true or false. In programming we use such a understanding in our scripts that in many places you will see in programming that basically all programming depends on whether it's true or whether it's false. For example, writing some code which has some logic, and you want to do something or run some particular code if something is true. For example, user goes to some login form and enters his email and his username and his password, okay? And then when he presses submit, you have written some code which checks whether that user exists in database or that he doesn't exist in database. And if he exists in database, it returns true, right? So Boolean value true. And if it is true, then you run some block of code. You run some block of code which logs in that user. But if it is false, then that user is not simply get logged in, and you could run another code in that scenario, or you definitely wouldn't log him in because he is not in database. And that's basically what is Boolean value. And like I mentioned before, I will show you. We could simply write that Boolean, create variable Boolean, I will call it, okay, and it takes whether true, as you see, or whether it takes, oops, sorry guys, I wanted to press Ctrl D, because as I mentioned before in Notepad++, if you go before line and you click Ctrl D, it just copies and pastes or duplicates that line basically. And another is false, and false, okay. So true or false, only two values, and you can write even these, true or false, whenever you need in your scripts. But understand that Boolean takes only true or false. Then third one, the next data type is object, and that we will not be looking at object at this stage, but objects are basically something what you create, and you create actually classes, and you initiate or create objects from those classes whenever you need that objects. But I will not be messing up your head at this stage, because this is just basic, and when we will get to objects and to object-oriented PHP programming later in this video series, and when I will show you objects, you will understand what I'm talking about. But for now, just understand that object in PHP is data type as well. Then there is another data type which is null, and null value. What you can think of null value is, for example, if we create some variable, I will tell you how I learned what is null value. For example, null, I will call it null underscore val. Here I called this variable null underscore val, and it would take, let's say, null value. And you might ask, what is null value? But for example, if you imagine a car park, how I understood null value years ago, but this was what actually made me understand what is null value. Null value basically means that there is some value, but it is simply empty. It's not filled, but that value actually exists. And if you think about car parks with cars, or for example you think about text, this is some text, okay? And you see that here between we have these spaces, but every space is actually some value. Simply there is nothing in it. There is no letters in that value or in that particular spaces, but that is value which makes the text be separated one from each other. This is one way how you could think about null values when you think about null value data type. And another way how to think about null value is, for example, if you think about car park with cars, then imagine that there is car park and it is filled up with cars, and it's full at the moment, okay? And for example, imagine that there is empty car park. Some particular car park, it's just stands empty. So think about that car park place still exists, but it simply is not filled with anything. So that's null value. You will understand this as well when we will start programming and when we will get to null values, and well, we will get to it, and actually you will understand it anyway. But for now, just think about car park. Whenever you hear a null value, just understand that there is some value. Simply there is nothing, okay? Whether it's space, whether it's car park without car, okay? Car park place exists but no car in it, but that place exists, so it's null value in that particular car park, okay? Think something like that. And then resource is the last one data type in PHP. And resource data type, you could think about it as something what is not related to your particular application, but what comes in from some other application. For example, database connection, that's a resource, because that database is not in your application, but that value, that resource, that data type could exist, for example, connection to your database. When we will talk to MySQL database and we will be or MariaDB database and we will start talking about this, you will understand what is resource, because we will actually create a connection to database. And when the connection to database will be created, that will be actually a resource, because that will be connection to that database. That means that we have connected to database, and we will create this connection to database in some particular variable, which will tell our scripts that connection has been established to this database and what connection is it, and that is resource in PHP, and that's data type. And like I mentioned before, for now just understand these data types, because you don't need to learn them really. You need to just understand that they exist, and you will learn them anyway when we will start writing scripts and codes and so on. Because if you don't know that these data types exist, you will not be able to use them, because you will not be able to understand what to use. I'm trying to teach you actually how I learned and what were my mistakes when I started. I started grabbing from top to down, and then nothing at the very beginning came out from all that, and that's why I'm understands that to learn any programming language, and it's very important to start from very basics and understand basics, and just to know that those things are there. And if you know that those things are there, then we programmers, we just don't need to remember this. We can always open Google and Google it and find whatever we need, but if we know that that thing exists for that particular language. Okay guys, this is pretty much it about data types in PHP, and if you enjoyed this video and found this video useful, then subscribe to my channel, like this video, share this video, and see you in my other videos.